So I'm going to start in Illustrator, but you can build your entire banner ad in Adobe Animate. But in case some of you like working in Illustrator, I'm just going to show you that as an option as well. So we're going to create a document in here. Make sure to go to web, so it's optimized for that. And the size is going to be 160 by 600. I'm going to do the skyscraper ad, and in class we'll go over all the different sizes of banner ads and stuff. Just make sure the color is at RGB, that's for web, CMYK is for print, and then you want 72 for the resolution, which is also optimized for web. For print it would be 300 at least, and create. So this is that skyscraper banner ad. So you're just going to build shapes. You can use the pen tool and get really fancy. I'm just going to show you a couple simple shapes, like the star tool I think is a good one. So it's underneath the rectangle. So I'm just right clicking over here and getting to that star tool. And I'm just clicking and dragging it out, and I can use the down arrow keys to make less points and then the up arrow key to make more points. And you can just click and drag it out any size. It has a stroke on it right now of black, but I'm gonna flip that, and then I'm gonna change the color just by picking a different color over here. So you can obviously make yours any color you want. I came up to the move arrow and moved it around. Try thinking about what the buttons on your ad will be, what your ad will be about. Think about the kind of shapes you'll need for that. You can also use the Polygon tool, and I'm clicking and dragging it out, and similarly you can use the up arrow to add more sides and the down arrow to add less sides, and then you can change the color here to whatever you want. So what I really want to show you in Illustrator is a quick way to resize photos that you bring in here, because we do not want the banner ad to be a very large size, because that will take a long time to load on a website or a phone. So if you're using a photo for yours, you want to make sure to get it the right size. So I'm going to bring a photo in, File, Place, and you can see this photo is huge. It's 20 megabytes, which is not going to be good for web or for people looking at it on their mobile phones. So I'm going to place it, and I'm going to show you how to resize it. So I'm just dragging this out, getting it in the place I want, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm just doing Command minus key, and that's Control minus key on the PC. And I'm going to make a mask for this so we can get it the exact right shape that we want. So I'm in the rectangle tool up here, just right clicking to get to that rectangle tool, and I'm going to make it white. So you can come down here to make it the default fill and stroke is a white fill and a black stroke, and then you can click on the stroke and go to none down here. So it's just a white fill. And then I'm making a rectangle the whole size of my banner. And then I'm going to come back into the selection tool, which is V on the keyboard. I'm going to hold Shift and click the photo. So I'm clicked on both the photo and the entire white rectangle that I just made. So those two things. And I'm right clicking and make clipping mask. So now we just see the part of the photo that's going to be in the banner. I'm going to come to the artboard tool, which is down here, artboard tool, and I'm going to hold Option, and you can see the cursor change here when I click Option, and I'm going to drag out, release the mouse, release Option, and while I'm still in the artboard tool, I'm going to change the size of the artboard by just clicking and dragging it up. So we're going to get just this artboard 2 up here, see O2, artboard 1 copy. The second artboard that we just created is just going to be the photo. So what we're going to do is we're going to export just that artboard so we have that image in that size. So File, Export, Export As, and you want to check Use Artboards. And your range will probably say 1 to 2. They'll probably look like this. And you just want 2 because we just want that second artboard that we made. And I'm going to call mine Skin banner 2, and we want to make it a JPEG, so it's a smaller, more compressed file. We don't need the ping. And this all depends on what yours started at, but you want to end the format as JPEG. You want to export it as a JPEG and press export. And then this is going to pop up, and here we can see that it's going to change the resolution for us to 72 pixels per inch, and that's exactly what we want. We want it to be a smaller file. So this is, instead of having to go into Photoshop and resizing your image, you can just do it here in Illustrator, and since we have our document set up as a web-based document, it's going to change the resolution for us when we export that artboard. Okay, so now if you come into your folder, you can see that it's in here, and now it's only 45 kilobytes. So it changed it for us dramatically. So now what we can do is we can delete this artboard. I'm in the artboard tool and I'm just hitting delete on the keyboard. The image is still going to be there, so you have to come to your selection tool and you can select all this stuff and just hit delete. So now I'm going to go to File, Place, and I'm going to pick the new one that I made. And I'm just going to show you the two side by side so you can see. So now you can see it's a much lower resolution. This is going to be better for web, and we didn't have to do a ton of work to get there. So now I'm going to delete the old one and just move the one I just made in there. So it's all set up for us. And now you're going to spend more time thinking about the buttons you're going to create. You know, maybe you'll make a rectangle button and it has no fill or no color, so you can come here and add a color, or you could always use the eyedropper tool here and you can pick a color from your photo, which I think is a nice thing to do because then it keeps it all consistent. You are going to spend time setting yours up so it looks great, and when you have it looking the way you want, you're going to save it, because we're going to bring so I'll call this skyscraper banner, and you're going to save it as an Adobe Illustrator file. Just press OK for everything, and because we can bring the Illustrator file into Animate. Now again, if you want to make yours completely in Animate, that's fine too. We'll go over that in a moment. So now we're going to come into Adobe Animate and we're going to make two files. You can work on them both at the same time. So create new HTML5 Canvas, and you can change the size here in the properties. If you don't see this, you come to Window and make sure Properties is checked. And the first one, we're going to make the same size as our Illustrator, 160, tab 600, and then come to File, New, and this one it'll let us change the size here. So just make sure it's HTML5 Canvas, and you're going to make this 250 by 250. So you'll have your square, and your skyscraper set up. So if you want to import an Illustrator file, you just come up to File, Import, Import to Stage, and make sure you grab the AI file. And that all looks good. Import. I can come here to the timeline. So it made it all one layer. And if you can see, if you come to your library, we have this, and you have this image in there too. So you're going to have to make a new layer for each of these shapes, which is a little bit of an annoying thing about doing it in Illustrator and not creating the shapes in Adobe Animate. So it's really up to you how you like to work. If you wanted to use the pen tool and create something really complicated and you're more comfortable in Illustrator, this might be worth it for you. If not, if you're just doing simple shapes, you might want to make them in Adobe Animate. So to make a new layer, you just come down here, New Layer, and we can call this Star. And I'm going to come into this layer and I'm just going to move this stuff out of the way. So I'm going to click on this, Control or Command C, then click on the star layer, Control or Command V, and that's in there. And I can just click on this and press delete to get rid of it. and then you'll make a triangle, and so on. So I'm clicking on this, Control C, clicking in here, Control or Command on the Mac V, and then you can just delete this one. You can also have a lot of shapes that you create sort of out here, outside of your canvas. If you want to be moving stuff in and out, you can have them on a layer and call it like scrap layer or test layer or whatever, and then you can bring them, copy them into other layers to animate them. So you can add text in here on top of these, and I'm going to show you how to first create shapes actually in Adobe Animate. So I'm going to zoom in just by hitting Command plus or Control plus on the PC, and I'm going to create a new layer and call it star. And there's this Polystar Tool, so I'm going to click on that, and then you come into Properties, and where it says Tool Settings here, you can get an Options pop-up, and you can select the number of sides. So you can do 7 or 9, however many you can do, however many you want. And press OK, and then you just click and drag out a star. And then I can come into the Selection tool here, and you can change the color, make it whatever color you want. And you can use this. This is what's kind of weird about Animate, is this transform tool. Well, first of all, the key command is Q, which is unlike other Adobe programs, and it's a separate tool. So you can't, when you're in this selection tool, you can't make it bigger and smaller. That bounding box won't show up. So you have to come into this tool here, the free transform tool, and that's where you can make it bigger and smaller. You still hold Shift to keep the aspect ratio intact. So this is the place you can also rotate it, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to make another button in here in another layer. So new layer, double click on here to rename it, call it circle. And then I'm just going to come to the circle tool, and I'm going to hold Shift. So I'm pressing Shift on my keyboard and dragging out a circle to keep it a circle shape. Then I'm going to come and select it, and I'm going to make it a new color. So I'm just going to show you a different way to change the color. You can change it here, or you can come into your little color palette, or you can click on this one, whichever way makes sense for your brain for how you like to work. And I'm just making them bright colors so we can see what's going on. Okay, so you're going to spend a lot of time making this and making your composition and shapes look great. The next thing we're going to do is add some text. So I'm going to make a new layer, double click, and I'm going to call it Click Me. And I'm going to come into the text tool. I'm going to come over here, and I'm just going to write click. It is the same color as the circle, which we don't want, so we'll come in here and make it white so we can see it. And another thing I like to do is this letter spacing. You know, you can space it out more, you can really fit it into the shape, and then you can obviously change the size. You can change the paragraph format and the font, all that good stuff. And we want to move it on top, so I just grab that text layer and dragged it to the top. And now in the selection tool, just get that looking right. Actually made that letter spacing way too big, so let's make it fit. There we go. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to make the circle and the star buttons so that we can click them. So one of your canvases will have the entire banner as a button, and one of them you'll make shapes be a button. At least one shape should be a button. So what you do is select, double click on the shape you want to make a button, and there's two ways to do it. You can either right click and do convert to symbol, or you can come up to modify, convert to symbol, same thing. And this little pop-up is going to come up. So just make sure in the type that we have it as a button, and a common way to name buttons, which I think is helpful, is just BTN, short for button. And then you can do what's called Camel Lettering, which is where the first letter is capitalized, the first letter in each word. So it's like the humps of the camel, the first letter in each word, and it's easier to read. And just press OK. And now when you come into your library, you can see that this button is here, and you can actually click and drag it into another spot in your file, which is nice. So to change the rollover states, so what it looks like when someone on a website is clicking on it or rolling over it, we have to double click here in the library to affect that. So double click, and you can see we have a different options here in the timeline. So up is just what it looks like when no mouse is hovering over it, when no one is clicking it. Over is what it's going to look like when someone is just like hovering their mouse over it. And then down is what it's going to look like when someone clicks it. And then hit is where you can define space around it that's kind of invisible. So if someone comes like close to it, they could start to click it. And hit is really good for accessibility, especially if you just had text that was going to be a button that you clicked. You wouldn't want them to have to select like the exact pixels of the letter. You'd want them to just be able to get close to the word and click on it. So we're going to come to over, and we're going to right click, and we're going to insert keyframe. So I just right click, insert keyframe, and then I'm going to just change the color, and I'm going to make it bright so we can tell what's going on. And then I'm going to go to down, and another way, if you don't like the right clicking, you can come to insert, timeline, keyframe. This does the same exact thing. And then we're just going to change the color again. Make it whatever you want, but that's too close to my original color, I think, so let's make it blue. And we're going to do the hit on the star, because this we have a pretty big circle, so I think people get close to that and can see that. So just to test it, if you want to see what it looks like, come to Control, Test, and it's going to open it up in a browser, and you can see it changes when we click it, it changes when we roll over it, and there's nothing happening with the star yet. So let's make the star. So you get back to that by coming up here and clicking on Scene. So that's how you get back to your scene. And if you see this output thing, just come back to timeline. So I'm going to come into the star. Okay, so you're going to double click on here, right click. You're going to double click on the star, right click, convert to symbol, make sure that it's button, and name it BTN. And it's good to name it like something specific like green star, so that if you have a lot of different objects, it'll show up. And then press OK. And now see it's in your library here. So we double click in the library on the button, and this is where we're going to change the overstate. So this is the hover. I'm right clicking, insert keyframe, come in here, and I'll make it red. You will probably make yours more subtle colors. Right click on the down, insert keyframe. I'll make it purple. And then this is where we're going to add the hit. So I want someone to just be able to come close to this and be able to click on the button. Since we have this more complex shape, I don't want them to have to get all the way into the star. I want them to like be able to come around here and be able to click the button. So we're right clicking on hit, and we're going to insert blank keyframe. So this is what's a little bit different. So insert blank keyframe, and the star is going to go away. And we're going to come to the rectangle tool, and we can see this is kind of the edge where it was, like the top left corner. And I'm just going to draw this around where I think the star was, and then I'm just going to come back to down and kind of go back and forth, and you can make it as big or as small as you want. This is going to be invisible, so it doesn't matter what color it is. It's just going to be the area where people can click on, and it's pretty big. But if you want to make an accessible website for people who have mobility issues or sight or can't see as well, you want it to be bigger so everybody can be able to click on it. Okay, let's check this out with Control Test. And now we can see when I get even close to that star, it changes color. So I'm able to click on it, and you can see the click color is different. And then with the click me, you have to be actually in the circle to get there because we didn't set up that hit option. So that's what that stuff is. All right, so now we're going to animate the objects. So come back into scene 1 to get back in here. Come back into your timeline. Okay, so we want this about 3 seconds. So I'm going to set this up here, the star, and 3 seconds is about 72 frames because we're at 24 frames per second. So 24 times 3 is 72. So I'm clicked on 3 seconds over here and I'm just hitting F5 on the keyboard, and that's going to kind of make that layer that long. You can do that for each of these. Click here, hit F5. And if you did it at the beginning with your first layer, then it would have automatically made them the same. Okay, so we're on the star and I'm going to bring my time indicator, which is this red bar in this program, bring it to 0 or to 1 to the first frame. You'll right click and create motion tween. Motion tween is just letting us animate that object. It's letting us make keyframes, and then the computer is making it move in between those 2 points. So the computer's doing a lot of work for us. We're setting up 2 points and the computer's making it move in between, really similar to After Effects. So now I'm going to move the time indicator down to like 10, and you just click and drag, similar to stuff we've been doing, and you'll see the motion path, and you can create as many keyframes as you want doing this, just moving the time indicator, moving this. You can, if you did something that was a mistake, just make sure you click on, let me move this out of the way, make sure you click on the actual keyframe. So I'm selected on the actual keyframe. I'm right clicking, clear keyframe all. So that removes that keyframe. And just make sure you're clicked on the actual thing and it's like highlighted around it. And then if you want to rotate, you can come into the free transform tool and you can rotate it around. And you can play around with all of that. What I do want to show you is how to refine this and add some easing and different effects into it. So I'm on this star, and you can see that it's become a motion tween because this icon here changed. And I'm going to right click and hit refine tween, and we get this graph here. And you can see that it has the rotation and the location set up because that's what we've changed. And you can add ease, and I think the bounce and the spring is kind of fun, so click bounce and you can see what that does. And I'm going to bring the time indicator back. There's a little play button all the way down here, and you can kind of see it's bouncing around a little bit. So you can really come in here and play around with these options, move stuff around. You can add ease to each of them, to one of them. I really want you to experiment with this, and adding ease on the rotation is kind of cool too. You can bounce in or bounce or spring. Let's see how that looks. The rotation, it might not show so much. So you play around with that, see how it looks on yours. You're going to spend a lot more time than I'm spending in this. If you want to get out of this graph thing, you just right click and uncheck refine tween, and then you're back. Okay, so one more important thing. To animate the photo, you're going to have to convert it into a symbol. So if you have photos in yours and you want to animate and move them, you're just going to right click, convert to symbol, and instead of a button, you're going to make it a graphic because we don't need, unless you wanted a button. But if you just want to move it around, so name it pumpkin. And then you'll see it's going to show up in your library. So just make sure if you're going to animate the photo, you can you change it into a button. You can also, if you want to change the opacity, you'll right click and create a motion tween on this, And if you want to change the opacity, you come, this is kind of a little hidden here. So you're in properties, you're selected on the photo, you're in properties, and you go to alpha, and you can animate that as well. So I'll show you what that looks like. So that's just making that fade out. Okay, another thing that this is similar to After Effects, you can take this like layer bar and you can just click and drag it so that if you want the star to end, you know, it'll just disappear after that. You can also click on, well, you have to make it a motion tween first. Create motion tween, and then you can drag that so the circle doesn't show up until later. So you can adjust when stuff is starting, when stuff is ending. Once you make it a motion tween, you can really adjust those bars. So you're going to have one where you have the buttons as shapes, and then you're going to have one where the button is the entire thing. So how we do that is we make a new layer. So come down here for new layer, and I'm going to call this banner button, because the whole banner is going to be a button. Move this guy down a little bit so we can see the whole thing. And then I'm going to grab a rectangle and I'm going to make it the entire size of the banner. You can make it a little bigger if you want, if that helps you. So make the rectangle, click on it, come into the color box, make the alpha 1, and that's going to make it transparent so that we can see everything. And then I can click on it again and double click on it again so we see the dots here, and we're going to convert to symbol and make sure it's button, and we're going to call it BTN banner, or you can call it like whole banner or whatever you want to call it. And we're in the library here, and we see this banner button that we just made, so I'm going to double click on it, and you can change the states. So I'm in over, right clicking, insert keyframe, and you can change it so it turns a certain color. Totally up to you, or you can leave it not, you can have it not turn a color. That's up to you and what you want. You can have it just change when it clicks down. And so I'm going to come back into the scene, and then we're going to link it to a web page. So I'm clicked on the banner button. So my banner button is selected, and you can see the like bounding box around it. Sometimes that's why I make it a little bit bigger, just so it doesn't get lost in all my objects, so I know that I'm highlighted on it. And we're going to come up to Window, Code Snippets, right here, kind of in the middle, Code Snippets. This is going to pop up, and we want HTML5 Canvas, and we want Actions. Click to go to web page. So that's HTML5 Canvas, Actions, click to go to web page, and we're going to double click. Double click. And it's popping up, it's telling me this. I'm just going to say okay. Now this code pops up, and I don't want you to get overwhelmed by this. Look, it gives you instructions on what to do. So automatically Adobe has it going to their website, which is Adobe. You can leave it that, or you can make it yours. Like I want mine to go to my shop. So you can just come in here, make sure it's going to the link you want, and then we can test it. So Control Test, and it'll open up here, and I'm going to click on it, and it links to my shop. This is a terrible example, by the way. I want yours to look a lot better. So just make sure the link's working and all that stuff is working. And next thing, we're going to export. So again, I'm just showing you these really simple tools. I want you to take your creativity and make these amazing and very well composed and very interesting. So not like mine. So to save, to export, we're going to go to File, Publish Settings. And actually, I'm going to do the other one for now because I think that looks at least a little better. So File, Publish Settings. Okay, so these are important things here. Make sure that JavaScript/HTML is saved, and then the output is really important. So click on the folder, and you're going to make, in your M drive, you are going to make 2 folders, one for each of these banners. So I'm going to call this one, this is how you'll name it in your M drive. So it'll be Lee, R, first name, last initial, and then I'll call it add 1. So, and then the second one will be your name, add the same thing, just add 2. So you're making a folder for each. So each of you in the M drive submissions will have 2 folders, one for each ad. And then you can name this, you know, square. And press save. Now it hasn't actually published it yet. So what you probably want to do is uncheck loop timeline, because imagine this being in a website. If it was looping over and over again, it would probably drive everybody crazy, and you want people to click on your stuff, not be annoyed by your stuff. So probably uncheck loop timeline unless you really want it looped, and then you press publish, not just OK. You want to press publish. And now we can come into the file and see in the folder we have the square HTML and the JavaScript file. Now if you did have an image, let me show you what that looks like so you can make sure that the image gets saved. So this one that has an image, I'm just going to do the same thing, publish settings, click on the folder. I'm going to go back to here, and I'm going to make a new folder, and I'm going to call it we are add 2, and then so it's saved in there. I didn't change the file name, but you will do that, and uncheck loop timeline and press publish. Now let me just show you. Okay, so add 2. Now since this one had an image, it automatically makes an image folder. Now what you really want to be careful of is that you don't move any of these files around, because if you move this image folder somewhere else, it's not going to know where to read the image from, and it will be broken links and stuff. So just make sure after you save these 2 folders, your 2 ads into the M drive, just make sure to check it. So click on the HTML one, double click, and it should open up, and check all your links and stuff and make sure they're working. You'll have, each one will have a link to another web page. It can be the Adobe page or anything that you want. Just nothing inappropriate or offensive, because remember, we are in a class. Okay, one important thing I almost forgot is you want to check the size on these folders, because you do not want your image to be too big, because it will take forever to load on a website, and especially on mobile phones, you don't want it to be enormous. So I'm clicked on the whole file folder. I'm just right clicking and get info. On PCs, you right click and go to properties, and you can have this up, and this is 12 KB, which is great. The max you want it is 200. Let's see what the second one with the image is, because this one will obviously be bigger. So this one with the image is 102 KB, and that's good because that's why we resize that image in Illustrator. If you don't like resizing in Illustrator the way we did, you can resize it in Photoshop. Just make sure you're not over 200 on this, or it's going to take way too long to load. So that's an important thing to remember, and you're checking the entire file, not just the entire folder, not just the one file. So make sure you check that out and keep it under 200, because that will be part of your grade.